This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, hello there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe birthday boy. And I'm shocked about this guy's birthday being on March 20th. I thought it was in January. But nope, it's Bobby Orr. He's 73 today. Now, I know traditionally I'm not supposed to, if I do a on this day about somebody, I usually don't do a birthday boy one or vice versa because that would be kind of killer diller. However, because my other choice was Pat Riley and I couldn't really talk about Pat Riley in a positive way, despite the fact he won many titles with the Lakers in the 80s. He helped the Knicks and the Heat in the 90s and 2000s. National pride wins out. The last Canadian born person I did was actually Brian Berard. And I haven't done a hockey player in 11 days. Basically, it was football, basketball, broadcasting, baseball, basketball, football, basketball, soccer, speed skating, football. So now I've got to go with hockey. And of course, Bobby Orr. I will leave a link to the on this day I did about Bobby Orr because, I did a topic on Bobby Orr's jersey retirement in January. So check that out. So anyway, let's talk about the man, Bobby Orr. One of the greatest defensemen of all time. He had good speed, scoring, and playmaking abilities to revolutionize the position of defenseman. He played in the NHL for 12 years, 10 with the Bruins and 2 with the Blackhawks. Lots of people like, he was a Blackhawk? Yeah, I'm afraid so. Orr is the only defenseman ever to win the league scoring title with 2 Art Ross trophies. He holds the records for most points and assists in a single season by defenseman. Not goals, that's Paul Coffey, 1986. Or what? 8 straight Norris trophies, aka best defenseman. He actually won 3 straight MVPs. I forgot. I didn't even know about that. 3 straight MVPs. That didn't make sense. 2 for sure. Orr was actually inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1979 at the age of 31, becoming one of only a handful of players to actually be in the Hockey Hall of Fame without having to wait 3 years to be inducted after retirement. Orr was, of course, one of the greatest NHL players in history. Well, duh. Orr started out at organized hockey at age 8, but moved to defense because they liked his control play. He actually attracted the nose of NHL scouts as early as age 12. And at 14, you can't do that this nowadays. I think the minimum wage is 16 in the OHL. He joined the Oshawa Generals, who were kind of the Bruins junior hockey affiliate, if you must. So he joined the Boston Bruins, the team that had not won the Stanley Cup since 41 and hadn't qualified for the playoffs since 59. So basically, Boston was at its lowest point. Then in the Rangers, basically, it was almost always Toronto, Detroit, and Montreal in the playoffs in the 1960s. And then Chicago and New York would jump in every so often. Boston would turn things around, especially with the Phil Esposito trade after the 67 season. But anyway, the Bruins won 2 Stanley Cups and lost in the 74 finals. We can't blame them because Philly wanted it more. Orr scored the clinching goal in both Stanley Cup final games, 70 and 72, and was named the MVP. Or Conn Smythe, if you will. He was actually the MVP of the 1976 Canada Cup hockey tournament, which was weird because, Bobby Orr was breaking down and all that. Meanwhile, in 76, Orr left Boston to join the Chicago Blackhawks. But, of course, injuries had destroyed his left knee and basically retired at the age of 30 in 1978. Orr's first contract, was one of the first to be negotiated by an agent, that being Alan Eagleson. His second contract was the first $1 million contract in the NHL. Unfortunately, Orr was deeply in debt thanks to Alan Eagleson's patheticness and all that. Orr went into the business to rebuild his finances, and Orr helped the investigations into Eagleson's fraud convictions and prison sentence. Orr went into the player agent business in 96, and his agency represents 20 active NHL players. All that. Orr has 2 sons and is a grandfather. Okay. So anyway, Orr was born in Parry Sound. And basically, he was Very huge and all that. As a young defenseman, he was actually noticed by the Boston Bruins in the spring of 1961, and he was only 12 years old, playing in a youth tournament outside of Ottawa. He actually played 58 of a possible 60 minutes in one game, which is amazing and all that. The Bruins' guy, Ren Blair, who would later go on to help the North Stars out, would say he was a combination of Doug Harvey and Eddie Shore. The Bruins decided to invest $1,000 to sponsor Orr's minor hockey team. In 2018 dollars, that would be over almost $8,500. Although 3 other NHL teams tried to get Orr, he signed in '62 with the Bruins. And he explained to sign with the Bruins because, quote, they're a team of the future, they're rebuilding, and I want to be part of that building program. Not many players would want to be part of a rebuilding team right off the bat. Ren Blair basically helped Boston try to get Oshawa a OHL team. All that. So basically, yeah. Bobby Orr would play for Oshawa, be boarded up with his family. But basically, he would have to. Well, actually, Bobby would stay in Parry Sound for his schooling, skip generals practices, and would drive south to play games on weekends, a 3-hour trip one way, which isn't that bad. So Oshawa joined the OHA, the predecessor to the OHL, and basically did all right and all that. Oshawa was 4th in the OHA, but they won the Ontario Championship as they took down St. Catharines, home of the Blackhawks, where Bobby Hull and Stan Mikita honed their skills. The Montreal Junior Canadiens. Weird why they would be the OHA instead of the Quebec League, like Montreal in the OHA. It happened. And the Kitchener Rangers. Fuck. Sorry. The team had to beat the Northern Ontario champion North Bay Trappers and the Quebec champion Shawinigan Bruins to face off in the Memorial Cup final. To face off in the Memorial Cup against the Western Canadian champions and all that. Now, in those days, the Memorial Cup was basically East versus West. It was not what we see today, that, you have 4 teams in the tournament, one from each of the 3 major junior leagues in Canada, and the host team. Or if the host qualified by winning the championship, the league championship, the playoff championship, then it was the runner-up. Such as in 2008 when Kitchener won the OHL championship, but there was the host of the Memorial Cup. So the number 2 team, Belleville, and yes, that had, I think, PK or Malcolm Subban, or one of the 2 on the team. I remember that. Edmonton would take on Oshawa in the Memorial Cup and all that. So yeah, it was a big matchup between Edmonton and Oshawa. Oshawa thought they were going to win the Memorial Cup, but it was damaged because Orr suffered a great injury against Shawinigan. And basically, the injury that was painful, it weakens the skating ability. Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens would host this event. Bruins management demanded Orr not play in the championship final because they didn't want damage to their quote-unquote property. Orr says he wants to play for the national champion. As he was not really signed to the Bruins, they said he would never play for Boston if he was held out. Orr played, but unfortunately Orr did not do so well, and Edmonton got the championship. Ren Blair basically fired Beb Gilliland, the guy who was the coach, for letting Orr play, and Blair left to go to the Minnesota North Stars. So basically there was some feuding and all that. Boston didn't seem to care about the prospect, so Orr got Alan Eagleson to try to negotiate a contract and all that. So Orr joined the Bruins in the final year of the original 6 era, 66-67. They wanted him to play center, and he was given number 27. Now, Orr's junior number was number 2, but because it was retired in honor of Eddie Shore, and I doubt that they would have let that number be to be unretired. The Bruins decided to give him number 5 because of Dave Clapper, and this was before Dave Clapper's number 5 was retired. However, Orr decided to choose number 4 because he thought that was a decent defenseman number, and he did okay. So all that. Orr was challenged by the veterans And Bobby Orr actually fought Montreal tough guy Ted Harris and beat him. Marcel Pronafel of the Leafs checked Bobby Orr into the boards, and Orr's knees were injured for the first time, but not the last time. Attendance at Boston Garden increased. However, the Bruins were still last place. Orr was named the Calder Trophy winner for Best Rookie, while New York Rangers defenseman Harry Howell won the Norris Trophy. He actually accepted the award and actually predicted Orr will own this trophy from now on. Orr was even the runner-up in the voting. Wow. Unfortunately, injuries would hurt him. Orr would only play 46 games. But remember that in 1968, there were 70-game seasons. Orr had injuries and all that. Despite the injuries, he still won the Norris Trophy. And the Bruins qualified for the 68 playoffs for the first time in 9 years. And the Bruins made a big one-sided trade. They got Phil Esposito, Ken Hodge Sr., and Fred Stangio from the Blackhawks, one of the best deals ever. And the Bruins added Glenn Saver and Derek Sanderson on the team. Glenn Saver played for the Bruins? Anyway, the Bruins were swept by Montreal in the first round. Orr had a big battle. In his third season in 1969, he had a feud with Toronto rookie defenseman Pat Quinn. Yes, that Pat Quinn. And basically, Orr would have to take on Quinn as Boston and Toronto met in the first round of the 1969 playoffs. In Game 1, Quinn caught Orr with his head down during a rush and caught him with an open ice hit, knocking Orr unconscious. Quinn was assessed 5 minutes for elbowing and was attacked by some fans and all that. It was a clean check and all that. Unfortunately for the Leafs, it was cannon fodder for Boston as they won the game 10-0. It was a brawl-filled game. And yes, that was the game which Toronto player Forbes Kennedy would play his last NHL game, especially after shoving a linesman to the ice. Bruins would sweep the Leafs before the Habs got them in 6 games in the second round, winning 3 of those games in overtime. So basically, Montreal had to win 3 overtime games, including Jean Believille's only overtime winner in his career in Game 6 to send the Habs to the Stanley Cup Finals against St. Louis. Orr would double his scoring title from the previous year to 120 points, which was 6 short of the league record, which was held by Phil Esposito, his teammate of all things, the previous year in 69. So Orr won the Art Rush Trophy. The only defenseman ever to do that, and he did that in 75 as well. In addition to the Norris and Art Ross, he got the Hart Trophy for regular season MVP, which was actually huge because it was his first, but not his last, as he won the next 2 years Hart Trophy and got the Conn Smythe for good measure, and became the first player in history, and the only player, I guess, to win 4 major NHL awards in 1 season. Wow, that's amazing. Orr would, of course, help the Bruins through the March of the 1970 playoffs by scoring 20 points, including 9 goals, and yes, that famous goal, and yes, of course, the image that you see before you. So anyway, it gave Boston its first Stanley Cup in almost 3 decades. And it was off of give and go pass from Derek Sanderson when Derek Sanderson was not drug riddled and all that. 40 seconds. I remember, and if you remember the Bobby Orr retirement thing, I basically quoted from the great Liam McGuire some famous moments with the number 4 and all that. Not going to go through them again because, that'll be way too long. In 1971, the Bruins were even better. They shattered a lot of offensive records. Orr was second in scoring behind his teammate Phil Esposito. Orr even scored 139 points, which was amazing. But the most amazing thing, 102 assists. Wow. Orr's assist record would not be broken until Wayne Gretzky did it in 1981. The Bruins looked like they were going to win the Stanley Cup for another year. They would take on the Montreal Canadiens, who had a greenhorn by the name of Ken Dryden, who ironically was Boston property for a few years. But unfortunately, Montreal beat them in Game 7 on Boston Garden Ice. Now, a lot of people said that they were confused. If you look at the 71 standings, you're confused. It's like, wait a minute, Montreal And Boston couldn't face each other. Why are they facing each other? Montreal's number 3, and Boston was number 1, which meant Boston should have played Toronto instead of Montreal. Well, they did the NHL to screw things up. The 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3 format would not really come into play until 1982 when they did the divisional round. They did them in divisions and all that. So yeah, so Boston probably would have crushed Toronto. Montreal, I think, would have beaten the Rangers. And I think Montreal could have still taken down Boston. Yeah, it was weird and all that. So yeah. Shocking. So anyway, Orr would sign a 5-year deal for $200,000 a season, U.S. dollars a season, which meant he had $1 million overall. Orr was second in the scoring race to Esposito. He again won the Hart and Norris trophies, and led the Bruins to the 72 Cup final against the Rangers, and scored the winning goal in Game 6 against the Rangers. He won the Conn Smythe Trophy, obviously. Unfortunately, Orr knew that his left knee was deteriorating, and he might not have much time left in the NHL. Boston had a massive upheaval in '73 because of the World Hockey Association. I will be talking about the World Hockey Association in a couple days in another video, but anyway. Harry Sinden decided to come back to Boston as the general manager. They lost Gary Cheevers, Derek Sanderson, and Johnny Pie McKenzie to the WHA. Tom Johnson was fired 52 games into the season and replaced by Bep Gildelin, who actually coached Oregon Jr. The Adams family, Western Adams and family, which owned the team since the 1920s, decided to sell it to a broadcasting firm. Boston lost in the first round to Chicago in the '73 playoffs, losing Phil Esposito to injury in the first round. But in '74, Boston looked good. They were tops in their division, and basically, everyone thought Boston would do it. Boston got to the final against the Flyers. All that. Orr scored the winning goal in Game 1 and helped Boston in Game 5 win. Unfortunately, those were the only 2 times that Boston would win, as Boston won Game 6. Lost Game 6. Orr was actually in the penalty box after a scuffle with Bobby Clark. And in the power play, the Flyers scored. People argue who scored the winning goal. Was it Moose DuPont or was it Rick McLeish? But in my mind, I think it was Moose DuPont. But anyway, the Bruins lost 1-0. And Bobby Orr almost scored on the Flyers' net and all that. And Bernie Parent admitted that if the desperation shot was on net, it would have tied the game. But Orr was not done yet. He broke his own previous record for goals by defenseman with 46. And won the league scoring title in 74-75. This was his last full season in the NHL. And his last season playing with Phil Esposito. The Bruins would be second in the Adams division, behind Buffalo of all teams. And Chicago would knock him out in the first round. That was shocking. Orr basically had issues and all that in the 75-76 season. Orr's contract was ending at the season, making him a free agent. The Bruins were sold by Storer Broadcasting to the Jacobs Group, where Jeremy Jacobs is kind of the owner now. As a condition of the purchase, the Jacobs Group would have to keep Orr in Boston. The Bruins and Orr would have a verbal agreement, and they had an agreement that Orr would take 18% of the Bruins after his playing days were over, a share in the ownership. The agreement was to be checked out whether it was legal for tax reasons and whether or not the league could approve it. But, they said, after his playing days were over, I don't see why not. However, Orr kept going through knee surgeries. The Bruins couldn't have contract talks with Orr or Eagleson. The Bruins insurer didn't want to insure a contract with Orr, and doctors advised the Bruins that Orr might not be able to play much longer. Orr came back from his injury the day after Phil Esposito was traded to the Rangers. Orr played 10 games, but sadly, pain in his knee would ruin him. His knee didn't respond to the therapy this time. even though he was supposed to be out for 7 to 8 weeks. And basically, his season was over after 10 games, which was pathetic. And the rumors were that Boston was going to trade him or basically negotiate him. However, Bobby Orr had issues. He was a very private guy and didn't want to talk to the press and all that. And Orr didn't even authorize a biography of himself till 2013. He didn't want to be the center of attention. Weird. And all that. But anyway, the issue was the move to Chicago. Boston and Eagleson would reach a deal that would pay Orr $4 million for 10 years. Or in 2019 dollars, 19 million American. But when Orr's knee required surgery, the Bruins had to reduce their offer to $295,000 per season instead of $400,000. And basically would give 18% of the Bruins in 1980. Eagleson turned down the offer and said that Boston offered a terrible deal with the ownership of the club. I don't think it would be wise for him to be a player owner. 2 days later, Orr would sign with the Blackhawks, and it was shocking. Orr in 1990 actually told a Toronto Star reporter that he didn't know that Eagleson never told him about the offer during negotiations or after. And Eagleson spoke publicly to reporters. He didn't discuss it with Orr. And it shocks me. It's like, how did Bobby Orr not realize that, the media was talking about it? Anyway, Orr offered $600,000 per season, but he had to pass a physical examination. Yeah. So, of course, Orr whittled down a list of potential teams in St. Louis or Chicago. Chicago decided to give him a 5-year guaranteed contract. Boston GM Harry Sinden was upset. He thought that the Hawks were tampering with him and wanted the Wirtz to submit to a lie detector test. And according to documents held by Orr, they had a valid case. Don Cherry suggested that the reason Orr never resigned was because of Orr's complete trust in Eagleson at the time. Orr said that he described Eagleson as a brother. Cherry recalled Orr refused to speak with the Bruins president directly, allowing Eagleson to mislead or withhold details from Boston's offer. And he never has held a role with the Bruins ever. But then years later, it was emerged that Eagleson had relations with Bill Wirtz, who was the Hawks owner, and NHL president John Sigler, and colluded to hold back salaries of certain players. And Orr had to dissociate himself from Eagleson. So yeah, basically, all this. But while he was playing for the Blackhawks, he never cashed a paycheck from Chicago, saying he was paid to play hockey and would not accept the salary if he was not playing. Strange as it sounds, Bobby Orr's knee problems didn't prevent him from playing in the 1976 Canada Cup, or the World Cup of Hockey as it's now called. But anyway, the Blackhawks gave him permission to play for Team Canada. Orr couldn't play in the 7 series against the Soviets, and badly wanted to play in Canada. Orr didn't know how much longer he could have had. So Orr's performance was huge. He was named to the tournament All-Star team, and he was named the MVP of the tournament. Of course, we all know about that famous Daryl Sittler goal over Vladdy Dzurilla. That Dzurilla slid out of the net to try to cut down the angle on Sittler, and Sittler easily flipped it over him. Don Cherry helped him with that. Basically, Orr would be unable to walk on the morning of a game, and he would be hardly able to walk in the afternoon. But then at night, he would be powerful and all that. I guess he was saving his energy, all that. Daryl Sittler even said Bobby Orr was better on one leg than many others were on two. Orr signed with Chicago, but only played 26 games in over 3 seasons because of his injuries. He had to miss the 77-78 season. He had a lot of knee problems and all that. So he only played 6 games in the 78-79 season and decided to retire. Boston decided to skip formalities and retire Bobby Orr's number in January of 79, which was amazing, all that. As of 2020, the only retired players in league history to average more points per game than Orr have been Gretzky, Lemieux, and Bossy. Hockey Hall of Fame waived the 3-year waiting period for induction in the Hall of Fame when he was signed at age 31. He was the 8th player to have the 3-year period waived. The next two being Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky. And basically, those two were the last ones to have the 3-year deal waived. And yeah, as I said about the Boston Bruins returning as number 4 and all that, the fans were cheering him and all that. The crowd did not allow Bobby Orr to say his thank you speech until he put on a Bruins jersey. And Larry Bird said that when he was at home games for the Celtics, he would look at Bobby Orr's number 4 instead of the retired numbers of the Celtic stars. This was amazing. He was a flashy style of play. But post-hockey, basically, there were a lot of problems. Orr's liabilities exceeded his assets, basically making him bankrupt. And a lot of people were like, how? But Eagles set up a corporation to receive Orr's income and pay Orr a salary. So basically, his assets were terrible and all that. Eagleson said that Orr was living beyond his means and ignoring his investment advice. Orr decided to split with Eagleson. Eagleson did actually purchase some assets of Orr. Orr was actually an assistant coach for Chicago for a while. The Blackhawks balked at paying him the balance of his contract, and Orr took him to court, selling for over $450,000 American, 1/3 of the money they owed him. But he would be a better financial person and all that. And Orr would play a part in giving and getting back at Allen Eagleson for his mistreatment of Orr. All that. Orr and many players wanted to resign from the Hockey Hall of Fame if Eagleson was not removed from the Hockey Hall of Fame. Eagleson knew the time was coming, and so basically he walked away from everything. Orr couldn't believe the trust Eagleson had, and basically it was just terrible. You know, it's just pathetic and all that. It's weird how Orr has 2 kids, but they didn't want to do anything about hockey. However, one of the best things for Bobby Orr has been he being fiercely loyal to former Bruin personnel and teammates. When Derek Sanderson had alcohol and drug abuse problems, wound up sleeping on a bench in Niagara Falls, Orr spent his own money to ensure that Sanderson had rehab. Decades later, Orr and Sanderson went into business together, managing finances for hockey players. And Orr helped out former Bruins trainer Frosty Forstall, who was fired from Tampa for alcoholism in '94. Frosty was diagnosed with brain cancer. Orr took the trainer into his home for a year until he died at age 51, and he was a pallbearer. Orr projected a clean image. He has a lot of things. A lot of records. Here we go. First and only defenseman to score 9 hat tricks. First defenseman to score 30 goals and 40 goals in a season. First player to get 100 points assists in a season. Only defenseman to win the Art Russ Trophy. Only defenseman to win the Lester B. Pearson / Ken Lindsay Award, which is the MVP that the players choose instead of the writers. Only player to ever win the Norris, Art Ross, Hart, and Conn Smythe, a.k.a. 4 major trophies in 1 year. That was in 1970. Highest single season plus minus, plus 124 in 70-71. All that. 4th in league history in point per game average of all players, not just defensemen, 1.39. And he's tied for 109th in career points. Well, obviously, if it wasn't for his freaking knees, I think he would have played much more and all that. Yeah, you got a lot of things. The Calder, the Norris, the Art Ross, the Hart, the Conn Smythe, Stanley Cup winners, the Lou Marsh Trophy for Canadian Athlete of the Year in 1970. Part of Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year in 1970. In 1975, he was actually voted the greatest athlete in Boston history, beating Ted Williams, Bill Russell, Carly Ostrowski, and Bob Cousy. But in a sense, Yastrzemski and Orr were still active. All that in 75. Those for Patrick Trophy in 79 for performance by for Americans and all of that. The Hockey News voted him second, the second best player of all time behind Wayne Gretzky. All that. He was actually ranked 31st in ESPN Sports Century's greatest athletes of the 20th century. And the top defenseman of all time. He still has the most points in one season by defenseman, most assists in the season, both in 71. Most 100 points in seasons by defenseman, which were 6. Highest plus minus, most assists in one NHL game by defenseman. Only Big Pratt, Pat Stapleton, Ron Stackhouse. Ron Stackhouse? Really? Paul Coffey and Gary Sutter have that mark. 6 assists in one game. And one of 2 players to win 4 major trophies in one season. Ovechkin in 2008. I guess he was the only one. Anyway. And fastest goal from start of overtime to clinch a Stanley Cup. 40 seconds in 1970 in Game 4. Hot dog. So he had 915 points in 657 games, and he had 92 playoff points in 74 games. If it wasn't for injuries, he definitely would have cleared 1,000 points. Just saying. So Bobby Orr is an icon. And we'll never forget his key acknowledgments. Wow, I really went to town on this. I hope Liam McGuire appreciates my work on this one. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully you watched for the whole 30 plus minutes. I'm Jeff Diamond. I'll go